Hari Hari. So this story is about Dhruva, Dhruva Maharaj, as he's commonly known. So there was Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma is, those of you who have familiarity with the Puranas of India, Lord Brahma is the creator of the universe. And he had a son. His son's name was Swayambhuva Manu, whom he put in charge of actually running the activities, the affairs of the universe. Swayambhuva Manu had two sons, Priyavrata and Uttanapad. We'll come to Priyavrata later in other stories. Uttanapad married Suniti, and they had a son, Dhruva Maharaj. However, King Uttanapad fell in love with another lady. Her name was Suruchi. He fell madly in love with her and became completely under her spell. And he tended to neglect Suniti. In fact, Suruchi, recognizing the power she had over Uttanapad, she was able to marginalize and turn her husband, King Uttanapad, away from giving attention to Suniti. So Suruchi effectively ran the affairs of the household and completely marginalized Suniti and Dhruva. Be that as it may, Uttanapad and Suruchi had a child, Uttam, the younger brother of Dhruva. So Dhruva and Uttam actually had a wonderful relationship, an excellent sibling relationship, and Dhruva was very, very attached to his younger brother Uttam. In fact, he was very protective of his younger brother Uttam. So one day in the course of their playing as young boys, 4 or 5 years old, they wanted to go and play with the king, with their father. So the father had finished the affairs of the kingdom, of the world, and he was sitting on the throne in the great hall from which he ruled. And the boys, Dhruva and his younger brother Uttam, came running in to play with their father, King Uttanapad. And Suruchi was nearby, and she saw the boys run and jump onto the lap of the king, and were playing with King Uttanapad, their father. Suruchi saw this, and she became furious. She stormed over to where the boys were playing on King Uttanapad's lap, and she grabbed Dhruva Maharaj and yanked him from the lap of his father. Needless to say, Dhruva Maharaj, the young boy, was completely surprised and shocked at this, and he looked up at his mother. It wasn't his own mother, but he considered her his mother, Suruchi, and he said, "Mom, why, what?" And Suruchi, her eyes fierce with envy, with hatred towards Dhruva, looked at him and says, "You are never, ever allowed on the king's lap." Dhruva Maharaj, a young boy, 4 or 5 years old, immediately started crying. First of all, seeing Suruchi behave in this way, he was completely shocked and surprised and fearful. And he turned to his father, King Uttanapad, and his father said nothing, said absolutely nothing. This further confused young Dhruva that what's going on here? His mother, or his half-stepmother, is saying these things, and his father, his dad, is not countering, is not protecting, is not saying anything in opposition to what's happening. Dhruva was thinking, this is entirely unfair. And he points to Uttam, who was still sitting on the king's lap. And Dhruva, naturally, as kids are, well, what about Uttam? And Suruchi says, no. If you want to sit on the king's lap, then you go to Narayan. Narayan is the name of God. You go to Narayan and you ask him to purify you so you have enough pious credit that you can take birth in my womb, and then you will be eligible to sit on the lap of the king. In other words, she was telling Dhruva to die and go to hell in not so crude a manner. Dhruva Maharaj could hardly understand what had happened. Crying, he went running to his mother, his mother's apartments in the palace, Suniti. Mom, and he tells the entire story of what had happened. Now, Suniti, she had up until this point had hoped, she had reckoned she was marginalized by Suruchi. Her husband, King Uttanapad, did nothing about it. He was completely enamored with Suruchi. He was completely smitten by her, henpecked, and he had effectively lost his mind. Let's put it that way. But until this point, she had hoped that she could shield Dhruva from the injustices of Suruchi and the inattention, the negligence of King Uttanapad. Obviously, at this point, this had not worked out too well. Dhruva Maharaj was crying his eyes out. He couldn't figure what had just happened. And Suniti, also realizing she's helpless. She has no one to go to. Her husband is the king. He is the all in all in the entire kingdom. He is completely smitten by Suruchi. There's nothing really that Suniti can do. She's powerless. And that, as any parent would know, breaks her heart. So she tells Dhruva, she says, I'm so sorry you're unfortunate that you actually have taken birth from me. And she says, Suruchi is correct. You have the misfortune of being my son. It would have been better for you if you had taken birth as her son. There's nothing more I can do. And your mother, Suruchi, she's correct. Your stepmother, Suruchi, she's correct. The only thing we can do now is really go to God. And Dhruva Maharaj said, well, where is he? And Suniti, being straightforward, forthright and honest with her son, she says, well, when the mystics and the saints want to spend time with communing with God, with worshiping God and connecting with God, they go to the forest. Dhruva Maharaj says, I'm going to go and take this up with Narayan. And he left home. He actually ran away. So we'll end there. We'll come back to this a little later. Hari Hari.